She blinked. Two simple words. Quiet. Barely audible. But they would change everything. Dr. Amara Hill stood frozen in the sterile silence of ICU room 6B, her gloved hands hovering midair, a fresh bandage in one hand, medical tape in the other. Her eyes widened behind her clear face shield, heart hammering like a drum in her chest. Did she imagine it? Had fatigue tricked her again? But there it was again. A subtle flutter. Vivian Whitmore had blinked. Not once. Twice. Deliberately. And that wasn't normal. Let's rewind, though. 3 weeks before that blink, Amara was just another face in the long hallway of Mercy General Hospital, a face constantly underestimated. At 27, she was one of the youngest full-time doctors on staff, brilliant but often sidelined, her talent shadowed by prejudice, her passion often mistaken for inexperience. Patients looked surprised when she entered the room. "Oh, you're the doctor," they'd ask, eyes flickering from her face to her skin, then back down to their chart, as if trying to hide their doubt. Colleagues called her ambitious, but not in the complimentary way. More like a warning. Watch out. She might shake things up. She'd faced all this before. Born and raised in the heart of South Atlanta, Amara knew that excellence was her only armor. Raised by her grandmother after her mother passed away from breast cancer, Amara had worked 2 jobs to put herself through college, earned a full ride to medical school, and graduated top of her class. Still, in the whitewashed halls of high society medicine, her achievements often felt invisible. Then came the patient, Vivian Whitmore. She wasn't just rich. She was untouchable. The name on skyscrapers, the face of a global empire. Vivian was the definition of power and poise. Until one fateful afternoon, when her luxury yacht, the Sovereign, was found drifting off the coast, Vivian lying unconscious on the deck, bleeding from the head. Initial reports said she'd fallen. Some murmured about champagne, others about slippery floors. But no one really knew. And with no witnesses and Vivian unresponsive, the case faded into the fog. Now she lay in room 6B, hooked to machines, vital signs stable but silent. She'd been in a coma for 4 months, fed through a tube, skin maintained by the round-the-clock rotation of nurses, her chart checked daily by rotating doctors, most of whom no longer believed she'd ever wake up. But Amara wasn't most doctors. She had been assigned to the ICU rotation unexpectedly. One of the senior physicians had taken a sudden sabbatical, and the department was short-staffed. Amara volunteered. Not for glory, there wasn't any in watching coma patients, but because deep down, something tugged at her. A quiet voice she always listened to. In the first week, Amara noticed details others missed. The slight variation in Vivian's pupil dilation, a small rise in heart rate when someone played music in the room, tiny finger twitches. Nothing concrete, but enough to keep her watching. The staff, however, treated Vivian like a ghost. "She's gone," one nurse whispered. "Her body's just playing catch-up." "Family's already moved on," another muttered. "Brother's handling the business." Indeed, Vivian's younger brother, Thomas Whitmore, had taken over as interim CEO. With his tailored suits and polished smile, he now appeared on magazine covers, the reluctant leader, rising in crisis. But something in his eyes felt too practiced to Amara. Still, she focused on the patient. Every evening after the hospital quieted down, Amara lingered in room 6B longer than necessary. She checked the bandages herself, not because it was her job, but because it mattered. She cleaned her gently, spoke to her like she was awake, played soft classical music near the bedside. Debussy, Chopin, the pieces Vivian once mentioned in an old interview Amara had found online. She didn't do it for credit. There were no cameras, no charts recording compassion. She did it because what if she were the one lying there? That night, the night of the blink, had started like any other. The storm outside had been building since late afternoon, rolling thunder rattling the hospital windows. At 2:23 a.m., the power flickered. For a terrifying 12 minutes, the backup generator failed. It was chaos. Monitors beeped wildly. Nurses rushed down dark hallways with flashlights. Respiratory machines fell silent. Panic swept through the ICU like wildfire. Amara sprinted toward room 6B, her flashlight shaking in her grip. Vivian's ventilator had stopped. Amara acted instantly, inserting a manual resuscitator bag, rhythmically squeezing to maintain airflow. Her hands trembled, not from fear but from rage. Why aren't more people here? Why is no one treating her like she matters? She stayed in the room for the full blackout, alone, bathed in the glow of her flashlight, whispering, "You're okay, Vivian. I've got you. You're okay." When the lights returned and the machines roared back to life, Amara sat down, her knees buckling. No one would ever know what happened in that room. But she would. And so would Vivian. The next morning, Amara returned to change her dressings. As she peeled away the gauze along Vivian's forearm, she thought she saw the billionaire's eyelids flutter. She leaned in, thinking perhaps it was a reflex. But then blink. A pause. Blink. Slow. Deliberate. Her throat tightened. "Vivian," she whispered. "If you can hear me, blink twice." Silence. Then again 2 blinks. She wasn't imagining it. Amara nearly ran out of the room to find the attending physician, Dr. Charles Langford, a man who treated medicine like a cold formula. Numbers, stats, black and white logic. There was no room in his world for gut instinct. She blinked. Amara said breathlessly, "Twice," in response to my voice. "She's in there. She's awake." Langford stared at her, impassive. Spontaneous eye movement isn't unusual. But it was purposeful. I spoke to her. She blinked in reply. He sighed. Coma patients often display erratic behavior. We cannot interpret anecdotal responses as conscious communication. Let it go, Dr. Hill. But what if I'm right? He walked off. Amara stood in the hallway, her fists clenched. They didn't believe her. No one did. And the unspoken truth burned in her gut. If she were older, if she were white, if she were him, someone would have at least checked. But not her. So she returned to room 6B. Quietly, determined, and built a plan. She brought a whiteboard into the room, wrote yes on one side, and no on the other. She knelt beside Vivian's bed and began asking questions. Simple ones. Is your name Vivian? Blink. Are you in pain? Blink. Blink. Do you want to communicate? Blink. Her throat tightened. It was real. Amara began logging every interaction. Date. Time. Question. Response. Each entry filled a page. She created a binder, careful and detailed, not for validation, but for proof. The next day, during rounds, she tried again to share the breakthrough. One of the nurses laughed. You're saying she's talking with her eyes? Another smirked. You should write a novel, Dr. Hill. Sounds dramatic. She swallowed her pride. This wasn't about ego. It was about her. The woman everyone forgot, treated like a body, a placeholder. But Amara had seen something, felt something. Vivian Whitmore wasn't gone. She was trapped, and Amara was her only hope. What she didn't know yet was just how dangerous that made her, because someone else had noticed her visits to room 6B. Someone who didn't want Vivian to wake up. And very soon, the story of one woman's fight to be heard would become a battle to survive. The following morning began like a dozen others before it. Too much coffee, too little sleep, and a long hallway of patients clinging to silence. But for Dr. Amara Hill, something had shifted. Everything had shifted. Room 6B wasn't just a quiet corner of the ICU anymore. It was a battlefield of blinking eyes and buried truths. Vivian Whitmore was awake, not in the way most people would understand. Her eyes didn't stay open long. Her lips didn't move freely. But inside that paralyzed shell of a body, Vivian was screaming, and Amara had become the only one who could hear her. She didn't take it lightly. All throughout her rounds that morning, Amara felt her heart racing. Vivian had blinks, a voice, a system now. The yes/no board had worked. They had communicated. The billionaire wasn't just alive, she was conscious. And worse, she was afraid. Back in room 6B, Amara pulled up a chair, placed the whiteboard back on the bedside table, and took a deep breath. She began carefully. Vivian, is someone trying to hurt you? Blink. Was your accident really an accident? Blink. Blink. Amara froze. Goosebumps ran across her arms. This wasn't just about recovery anymore. This was about danger. She steadied her voice. Did someone push you? Blink. Someone close. Blink. The questions continued. A pattern formed. Each answer confirmed a terrifying suspicion. Vivian had been attacked. Not just neglected. Targeted. Left to die. Left to silence. Amara didn't realize she was crying until a teardrop hit her clipboard. She wiped it away quickly and whispered, "Don't worry. I won't let them win." But what could she actually do? She was a contract doctor, temporary staff, no hospital authority, no guarantee of support. And if she told the wrong person, she could not only lose her job, she could put Vivian in even more danger. So she decided to do what she had always done. Work harder, smarter, quietly. Amara began logging every conversation with extreme care. She noted eye movement, the question asked, how long it took for Vivian to respond. She even began recording voice memos for herself to analyze patterns later. Always outside the room, always discreetly. She pulled from her medical training, her research classes, her trauma electives. This wasn't just clinical observation anymore. It was evidence. But someone noticed. That afternoon, while reviewing a patient file in the break room, Amara felt a presence behind her. She turned to see a sharply dressed man with salt and pepper hair, piercing gray eyes, and a tailored suit that didn't belong in any hospital. He extended a hand. "Charles Remington," he said smoothly. "I'm Vivian Whitmore's legal counsel." Amara hesitated, then shook it. "I've heard about you," he continued. "The doctor who's been spending extra time with our client." "I've just been monitoring her care," Amara replied carefully. He smiled. It wasn't warm. "You know, Dr. Hill, coma cases like this are delicate. The media loves to spin stories. And investors, well, they panic. Our firm has a responsibility to ensure Vivian's image and legacy remain intact during her recovery." "Her recovery is happening," Amara said. "I believe she's showing signs of consciousness." "That's an interesting belief," he said coolly. "But unless there's undeniable, measurable proof, I'd strongly advise you to keep that belief off the record. For her own good, of course." Amara narrowed her eyes. "Why wouldn't you want her to wake up?" He raised a brow. Who said anything about not wanting that? But the warning was clear. Subtle. Legal. Dangerous. He turned to leave. "Oh, and Dr. Hill, be careful who you talk to. Some people might misunderstand your intentions." As he walked away, Amara's chest tightened. This wasn't just a legal formality. It was a threat. She returned to her station and stared at her binder. The data was growing. The truth was forming. But truth wasn't enough. Not in this world. She needed allies. That night, she called someone she hadn't spoken to in 2 years. "Marcus," she whispered into the phone. A familiar voice replied, groggy but alert. "Amara? You okay? I need your help." Marcus Fields had been her college friend. Now he was a detective with the Atlanta PD, one of the rare good ones. They hadn't talked much since her residency pulled her into 18-hour shifts, but she trusted him. More than anyone. An hour later, they met at a late-night diner just outside the hospital district. "I need you to listen," Amara said, sliding a copy of her notes across the table. "Vivian Whitmore didn't fall off that yacht. She was pushed. And she's trying to tell me who did it." Marcus read through the pages. "You got this from Blinks." "I developed a communication system," Amara explained. "She answers questions with eye movement. Consistently. Purposefully." He leaned back, whistling. That's wild. But brilliant." "She named her brother. Indirectly. Said someone close to her hurt her. Said it wasn't an accident. And now her lawyer is warning me off." Marcus rubbed his chin. "Whitmore money runs deep. Cops don't touch that family." "I know," Amara whispered. "That's why I'm starting with you." Marcus promised to look into it. But the moment she walked back into the hospital parking lot that night, she sensed eyes on her. She reached her car. The windshield was smeared with red paint. One word, liar. Her hand shook as she peeled the note off the mirror. "Stay away. You're making a mistake." She sat in her car, hands gripping the wheel, adrenaline roaring through her chest. But she didn't cry. She didn't turn the engine. She just sat there, breathing, fighting the panic. And when she finally drove away, she made a vow to herself. I will not be intimidated. The next morning, she resumed rounds like nothing had happened. She checked on Vivian. She smiled. She asked new questions. Is your brother's name Thomas? Blink. Did he hurt you? Blink. Did he want your company? Blink. Each answer burned deeper. A pattern of betrayal, greed, control. That afternoon, she found Vivian's most recent CT scans and ran them against older ones from her admission. She noticed subtle discrepancies in cranial pressure recovery, patterns that didn't align with a fall, but the files were locked under senior physician access. She requested a digital audit from the IT department under the guise of patient research. It was denied, but she wasn't surprised. That night, Amara got another message. This time in her apartment. Her front door was ajar. Nothing was stolen, but her binder was missing. All her notes, all her recordings, gone. Amara stood in the doorway for a long time, her heart racing. The message was loud and clear. Stop, or else. But if they thought she'd give up that easily, they didn't know Amara Hill. She pulled out a flash drive from her purse. A backup. Everything was saved. And she had started recording new video logs, voice memos describing each interaction, every question, every answer. This was no longer just a Coma case. It was a crime. And she was the only one who believed the victim. Back at the hospital, whispers grew louder. Nurses started avoiding her. Doctors dismissed her questions curtly. One evening, she overheard Dr. Langford speaking on the phone. She's pushing too hard. We might need to reassign her. The pressure was closing in, but something inside Vivian had changed too. One evening, as Amara played one of Vivian's favorite sonatas by Debussy, the billionaire's finger moved, not just a twitch, but a slow, deliberate stretch. Then a curl. She repeated it the next day. Twice. Vivian was gaining control. She was fighting. Marcus returned with news. Coast Guard report was edited. Original version listed possible head trauma by external force. That line's missing now. Amara's eyes widened. And guess who authorized the yacht retrieval and closed the report within 48 hours? Thomas, she whispered. Marcus nodded. He's covering something. But I need more. I need a direct statement. Witness. Anything. She's getting there, Amara said. I believe she'll speak. You sure? She nodded. She has to. It's the only way to survive. And Amara understood something in that moment. She wasn't just trying to heal a body anymore. She was trying to free a prisoner. The hospital was silent, but Amara's mind roared louder than ever. The night sky outside was pitch black, a mirror to the storm brewing inside her. She stood in the observation room outside Vivian's suite, arms folded tight across her chest, heart thudding with anxiety. Inside, her patient, No, her friend now, lay beneath pale sheets, blinking with new intent. The past few days had been a whirlwind of danger, doubt, and determination. And if Amara was right, and she knew she was right, what they had uncovered would shake the Whitmore dynasty to its core. Vivian wasn't just communicating. She was testifying. It started with a name, Thomas. Vivian had blinked slowly, twice, when Amara asked, Was it your brother who hurt you? Each deliberate blink was like a stab of thunder through the fog. Vivian wasn't unsure. She was certain. And now, Amara had to turn that certainty into something the world would recognize, proof. But getting proof meant putting herself on the line even more. With her notes stolen, the hospital watching her, and the Whitmore legal machine shadowing her every move, Amara was now more alone than ever. Almost. She reached out to Marcus again, meeting him in the hospital's underground parking lot at 3 a.m. It was the only time they could talk without raising suspicion. She said it was Thomas. Amara told him. He's after her company. He thinks if she stays in a coma, he'll get everything. Marcus didn't flinch. Makes sense. A month after the accident, Thomas filed for emergency control of Whitmore Global. The board granted him temporary power. Amara's jaw clenched. And what happens if she dies? She has no children, no spouse. Guess who inherits? Of course. Marcus pulled out a USB drive and handed it to her. Security footage from the marina the night of her accident. I had a friend pull it from backups. Amara clicked through the grainy footage on her tablet. It showed Thomas arriving at the yacht alone, hours before the reported time. He stayed there nearly an hour, then left. No mention of this in the police report. No explanation. He was with her. Amara whispered. He lied. And the timeline he gave to investigators? Off by almost 4 hours. Marcus leaned forward. This is enough to raise eyebrows, but not indict. We need Vivian's voice. Or better yet, Vivian awake. That was the crux of it. They were so close, but not close enough. Vivian was improving, yes. She'd moved a finger, slightly turned her head. But words? A confession? Still locked inside. Still something was changing. Amara had adjusted her stimulation therapy. Light exercises. Music. Familiar scents like lavender and jasmine oil. She'd even played boardroom meeting recordings through a speaker, ones where Vivian had dominated billion-dollar deals with grace and grit. And it was working. Vivian responded to familiar voices faster. Her breathing quickened when she heard Thomas's voice in a clip. Her hand twitched violently. She wasn't just conscious. She was angry. And anger, Amara thought, was better than silence. One afternoon, as Amara reviewed files in her office, Dr. Langford barged in. "Dr. Hill," he said coldly, "come with me." She followed him into the administrative boardroom, where a group of men in suits sat, including Charles Remington. Hospital executives. Something was wrong. "Dr. Hill," one man began, "we've been informed that you've been conducting unauthorized procedures on Ms. Whitmore, communicating with her, making unapproved adjustments to her therapy." "I've done nothing unauthorized," Amara said calmly. "Everything has been documented." Mr. Remington interjected. "We've also learned that confidential medical information has been shared with outside parties, possibly law enforcement." Amara's stomach dropped. They knew about Marcus. "Patient privacy is paramount," the chairman added, "and this hospital cannot be entangled in speculative allegations or conspiracy theories." "This isn't speculation," Amara snapped. "Vivian Whitmore is awake. She's communicating. She told me she was attacked." The room went silent. Then Langford laughed. "You're expecting us to believe a blinking game?" "It's not a game," she said through gritted teeth. "It's a medical reality. I've logged everything." "Where is this log?" Remington asked. "It was stolen," she admitted. "But I have backups." He leaned forward. "Doctor, if you proceed with this delusion, you'll be placing your entire career in jeopardy." It was a trap. Back down or burn. Amara stood her ground. "I'm not backing down. Vivian's voice deserves to be heard." Langford scoffed. "Then we're placing you on administrative leave, effective immediately." They escorted her out. Just like that. No thank you. No second chance. Just a locked door and a warning glare. But as they closed the elevator behind her, Amara felt something unexpected. Relief. Because now she was no longer inside the system. Now she was free to fight it. She returned to her apartment, locked the doors, pulled the curtains, and called Marcus. "They suspended me," she said. "I have no hospital access now. They're covering this up." "Then we go public," he replied. "Let me pull some strings." He arranged a meeting with a local journalist, Layla Monroe, an award-winning investigative reporter who had taken down corrupt real estate developers and uncovered political scandals. If anyone could help, it was her. They met in a quiet cafe the next day. Amara handed over all the remaining logs. Marcus provided the surveillance footage and the marina report. Layla's eyes narrowed as she read. "This is big," she whispered. "If this is real, if she wakes up, this could take down the entire Whitmore board." "She will wake up," Amara said. Layla nodded. "Then I'll be ready." Back at the hospital, news of Amara's suspension spread. Some whispered that she'd gone too far. Others started wondering. One nurse, Olivia, secretly slipped Amara video footage from Vivian's room, a new clip. In it, Vivian's lips were moving faintly. The audio was silent, but the shape was unmistakable. "Help! Me!" Amara cried when she saw it. It was all the validation she needed. Vivian was fighting. The next step was risky. Marcus worked behind the scenes to get a neurologist from a private firm to visit Vivian, one unconnected to Mercy General. They used Olivia's access to get him inside quietly. After a 30-minute examination, he turned to Amara. "She's in there," he confirmed. "Minimal conscious state, possibly moving into full recovery. She's trying to speak." Amara's heart soared. "We're close," she whispered. "So close." But danger struck again. That night, a brick shattered Amara's living room window. A note was tied to it. "Stop," she called Marcus. "This isn't just a warning," he said. "It's a message. Someone knows she's waking up, and they're scared." Amara looked at the footage again, Vivian's mouth moving. "Help me." The next morning, Marcus sent her a copy of a will. Vivian's, updated just 2 weeks before her accident. It removed Thomas as successor. It donated 60% of the company to medical research and community development. It was unsigned, but typed and ready. If she had lived another week, it would have been official. And if she woke now, she could still sign it. That's when everything clicked for Amara. This wasn't just a power grab. It was desperation. If Thomas lost the company, he'd lose billions. If he was exposed, he'd face prison. He had everything to gain by keeping Vivian silent. And now, Amara had everything to lose by helping her speak. But she didn't care. Not anymore. This wasn't about her career. It was about justice. The following evening, Amara returned to the hospital, disguised in scrubs, hair tucked beneath a surgical cap. Olivia helped sneak her in during shift change. She stepped into room 6B, breath caught in her throat. Vivian lay still, but her eyes opened the moment Amara whispered, "It's me." A tear slid down Vivian's cheek. Amara placed the whiteboard beside her. "Vivian, do you trust me?" "Blink. I'm going to help you speak." She played a recording of Thomas's voice. Vivian flinched. Then she whispered something, so faint it was almost air. But Amara read her lips. She pushed me." It was happening. Her voice was returning. Amara grabbed her phone, hit record, and whispered, "Say it again." Vivian's voice trembled. "He pushed me." Then she collapsed into sleep. But it was done. Amara had it. The confession, the voice, the proof. And the war was just beginning. The following morning, the air around Mercy General Hospital felt charged, like something electric was pulsing through the halls. But few people knew why. Only 2 people in the world had seen the most important thing that had happened that night. A woman, presumed lost, had spoken. Dr. Amara Hill sat in her car in the hospital's underground parking lot, heart still pounding as she played the audio back on her phone. "He pushed me." Vivian's voice was weak, broken, but unmistakable. She had spoken those words with purpose. Amara had captured it. It was the truth, delivered in a whisper that could shatter empires. Now it was time to act. She sent the recording to Marcus Fields immediately. He called her within minutes. "Are you kidding me?" he said breathlessly. "Amara, this is everything." "I need her out of that hospital," she said. "She's not safe there." "I'll call Layla," he said. "If she breaks this story with that audio, we've got pressure. Pressure means protection." "Do it," Amara replied. Now, meanwhile, back in room 6B, Vivian was regaining more control with every hour. Her eyes tracked movement with precision. Her fingers curled. Her lips moved. Speech was returning, slowly but undeniably. When Olivia entered the room that morning, Vivian turned toward her and gave the faintest smile. "She smiled at me," Olivia whispered when she met Amara in the stairwell. It was tiny, but it was real. "She's waking up," Amara said, emotion thick in her voice. "And she's going to take back everything that was stolen from her." That same day, Marcus and Layla made their move. Layla posted an explosive article on her independent platform with the headline, "Billionaire Heiress Awakens, Alleges Attempted Murder by Brother Within Minutes." It went viral. The article included a transcript of Amara's logs, the surveillance footage, Vivian's audio whisper testimony from Olivia, and Marcus a copy of the unsigned will removing Thomas from power. Social media erupted. Hashtags like #VivianSpeaks, #JusticeForVivian, and #WhitmoreTruth trended within hours. The mainstream media couldn't ignore it. News stations picked it up. Major publications scrambled to cover the story. Amara's phone buzzed constantly. Interviews were requested. Anonymous threats returned too. But the silence that once surrounded room 6B was gone. The world was listening now. Thomas Whitmore called a press conference within 24 hours. He stood behind a podium, feigning grief. "My sister is loved. I would never harm her," he said smoothly. "These accusations, they're delusional, tragic, and cruel." But as he spoke, viewers noticed something else. He was sweating and twitching because the truth was crawling out of its cage, and it had teeth. Inside the hospital, things had changed. The administration, desperate to save face, reinstated Amara under temporary investigative clearance. But they didn't control the narrative anymore. Vivian did, and Vivian had just given her first full sentence. "Tell the world." Amara, holding her hand, nodded. "I will. I promise." They began daily speech therapy. Amara brought in a neuro-linguistic specialist. Vivian responded like a woman on fire. Each day, her words sharpened, her sentences lengthened, her eyes no longer pleaded. They commanded. "I was on the yacht with Thomas. He cornered me. Said I was weak. Said the company deserved a real leader. He shoved me. Said it would look like an accident." Tears welled in Amara's eyes. But Vivian didn't cry. She was done crying. She was building a case. And when Marcus heard the recordings, he said 3 words Amara had been waiting for. "Let's arrest him." The district attorney issued a warrant for Thomas Whitmore's arrest. It was the biggest corporate scandal in a decade. SWAT teams surrounded the Whitmore family estate. Thomas was taken into custody without incident, but the footage went viral. A billionaire in cuffs. His mask cracked. His empire shook. Vivian watched it all from her hospital bed, a small smile playing on her lips. "He never thought I'd wake up," she whispered. "He didn't count on you," Amara replied softly. Vivian squeezed her hand. As days passed, Vivian continued to improve. She sat up. She ate solid food. She laughed. Her voice grew stronger. The entire medical staff, who once dismissed her, now hovered near her room like groupies. But Amara never left her side. Reporters camped outside the hospital. Every TV screen replayed the story. Every headline led with her name. But when asked who helped her survive, Vivian said the same thing every time. Dr. Amara Hill. A week later, Vivian requested a press conference of her own. She wore a pale blue blazer, her hair swept back, makeup minimal, voice steady. Amara stood just off stage, nervous, protective, but proud. Vivian took the podium. "I am alive," she began. "I was attacked by someone I trusted. My brother, Thomas Whitmore, attempted to take my life. Not just for power, but for profit. He wanted my company, my voice, my legacy." She paused. The room was silent, but what he didn't count on was her. She turned, locking eyes with Amara. Dr. Amara Hill. A woman this hospital overlooked. A woman who saw what no one else did. Who believed me when I had no voice. Who stayed when everyone else walked away. Amara blinked back tears. She saved my life. And I intend to make sure she saves many more. Gasps. Applause. Reporters shouted questions. Vivian wasn't finished. "I'm launching the Hill Foundation, funded by the Whitmore family estate. It will provide scholarships for young black women in medicine, support low-income clinics across the country, and fund research into long-term coma recovery." More applause. Vivian leaned in. "No one gets to silence us. Not anymore." Amara sat beside her later that night, both of them still in disbelief. "You could have picked any name for that foundation," Amara said. Vivian smiled. "I picked yours." 6 months later, the courtroom was packed. Every seat filled. Reporters lined the back wall. Every camera was fixed on the defendant's chair. Thomas Whitmore sat stiffly in a dark suit, his once confident smirk wiped clean, his posture tense. No longer a prince of industry. No longer an heir to a throne. He was now just another man on trial. And across the room, seated in the front row, was the woman he had tried to silence. Vivian Whitmore, flanked by security, stylists, and her attorney, but she looked unbothered, calm, dignified, poised. She wore a deep emerald green suit, a color of rebirth and strength. Her hair was pinned high, her jewelry minimal. But what stood out most wasn't what she wore. It was what glowed in her eyes. Justice. Next to her sat Amara Hill, equally composed, though her hands fidgeted in her lap. Vivian noticed. "You okay?" she whispered. Amara nodded. "Just surreal." Vivian smiled softly. "Let's end this." The prosecution delivered a brutal case. Evidence from the yacht surveillance, the manipulated Coast Guard reports, the unsigned will. Most damning, Vivian's video testimony. Though her voice had been shaky when it was recorded, her words were sharp. "I remember him standing above me," she said, "saying I was too soft, that I'd ruined everything. He reached for the railing, shoved me, and as I fell, I heard him say, 'You'll thank me for this one day.'" The courtroom gasped, but nothing prepared them for what came next. Vivian took the stand. In person, she stood, slowly but confidently, and walked to the witness chair with the help of a physical therapist beside her. Every camera in the room zoomed in. It was her, alive, speaking, standing. She raised her right hand, swore to tell the truth, and she did. For over 2 hours, she told them about the day of the attack, the way Thomas had isolated her on the yacht, his obsession with control, his resentment over being passed up in the will, how he had screamed about her being too emotional to lead, how he shoved her with no remorse. She spoke about waking up inside her own mind, unable to move, the terror, the helplessness, the days bleeding into weeks. Then the voice, Amara's voice. "She saved me," Vivian told the court. "When no one believed me, she stayed. She looked past what she was told and saw me." She looked directly at Thomas. "You tried to end me," she said, voice trembling but powerful. "But all you did was wake me up." The courtroom erupted in whispers. The judge had to call for order 3 times. Thomas's defense tried to poke holes, said Vivian was disoriented, confused, even emotionally unstable. But no one believed it. Not anymore. The truth had already spoken, and the truth had a face. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. When they returned, the room held its breath. On the count of attempted murder, we find the defendant, Thomas Whitmore, guilty. A sob broke out somewhere in the room. Reporters rushed outside to break the story. Thomas slumped in his chair, face pale. Vivian closed her eyes, letting the moment wash over her. Amara took her hand. They didn't say a word. They didn't need to. After the verdict, a press conference was held outside the courthouse. Vivian stood before the flashing cameras, flanked by her lawyer, and Amara, once again at her side. "I lost more than time when I was in that coma," she began. "I lost trust. I lost my voice. But I found something greater." She turned to Amara. "I found truth. And I found someone who never stopped believing in it." Reporters yelled questions. "Ms. Whitmore, will you return as CEO?" She smiled. "I'm naming Dr. Amara Hill as Director of Whitmore Health Systems." Cameras went wild. Amara blinked in shock. "Vivian, you earned this," she said. "You saw what no one else would. You saved me. Now I want you to help save others." Tears streamed down Amara's face as she embraced her. The story wasn't just about a billionaire anymore. It was about a young black doctor who refused to let power silence truth. 1 year later, a new hospital wing opened in downtown Atlanta, the Vivian Whitmore Center for Coma Recovery. Vivian and Amara stood together during the ribbon-cutting ceremony. "This facility will serve the voiceless," Vivian said, "those who can't advocate for themselves, and it will be led by the woman who gave me my life back." Applause thundered. Inside the building was a glass case. Inside that case, a whiteboard, marked yes and an O. The original one from room 6B. Underneath it, a plaque read, "When the world refused to listen, she heard me." Vivian Whitmore Amara walked through the halls afterward, taking it all in. Students greeted her with admiration. Nurses smiled. Young girls of color looked at her like she was a superhero. She had fought a system, and won. She hadn't just saved a life. She had changed countless others. As she turned a corner, she saw Vivian sitting beneath a cherry blossom tree in the courtyard. She joined her. Vivian looked up, smiling. Nice to see your name on the walls. I still can't believe it, Amara said. Vivian sipped tea. Believe it. You earned every letter. They sat in silence for a while, watching the blossoms fall like confetti. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't blinked that day? Vivian asked softly. Amara nodded. Every day. Vivian took a deep breath. Well, thank God I did. They both laughed. Not out of pain, but out of healing.